Having now heard the plans laid out in the budget, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, initially, one of the key questions to be decided is to what extent this will have an impact on the markets to ensure that the interest rates charged against this country's debt are kept low. And the signs are that because of the pre-budget talk and indeed what's in the budget, with the Office of Budget Responsibility giving an independent judgment about the rate at which debt and particularly the structural deficit will be managed down within this Parliament, that looks good. But of course there are tensions within the coalition between having quite significant deficit reduction and protecting the least well off. And one of the political questions will be, and this is important for me as a politician, is to what extent the poorest and the poorest taxpayers, both those groups, are protected from some of the tax increases, given that there are public spending cuts to come, which will obviously affect those who rely on public services more than the rich, who are less reliant on public services. And the signs are good in that not only was there an increase in the tax allowance, which will be of benefit to £170 a year to all basic rate taxpayers, but there was £150 there for children in low-income families. And combined, that will probably counter the impact of the VAT increase of 2.5%, which is a tax that falls heaviest proportionately on less well-off families, because a greater proportion of their household income is spent on vatable items, because some of the essentials still need to be bought in that way. So one of the measures will be that one, between fairness on the one hand and revenue raising on the other. And one of the other issues is to what extent the commitment by the coalition to provide for the Liberal Democrat policy of tackling income tax avoidance by taking income as capital gains, taxed at a much lower rate of 18%, has been addressed by the increase to 28% in capital gains without any of the complex tapers that were also proposed. The feeling, the Treasury advice apparently was that 28% was the way of maximising income before people refused to seek out capital gains because of what they consider to be punitive rates of taxation. So how much that delivers will need to come out in the wash. One of the other questions is, of course, what's hidden in the Red Book that wasn't announced in the budget, particularly when the Chancellor made a virtue of the fact that he was being more open than he would be. But there was plenty in there talking about future commitments to ensure that there is proposals to boost business in the regions, because what was said that there would be future announcements very soon on ways of providing tax incentives for small startups outside of London, the South East and the Eastern region. And that will be one of the ways, I think, in which the Chancellor is seeking to ensure that there's a more balanced growth in jobs, given the overheating of the South East that there's been and the pressure that that creates on housing and services. That's one of the issues.
And secondly, how will the effects on public spending help the economy, the wider economy?
Well, he signalled significant cuts in public spending, did the Chancellor, in this budget, and that will actually have an impact to reduce gross domestic product, or reduce growth, because it's one of the factors that feeds into growth. Obviously there's business growth and there's consumer spending and a number of other factors as well. But nevertheless, again, there was a balance to be found between deficit reduction, the protection of frontline public services, and the need to ensure that growth isn't too damaged by significant cuts in government consumption, government spending. And it remains to be seen what the impact will be, because the detail of the spending cuts has been postponed, as was always planned, to be to the 20th of October, when the comprehensive spending review will be announced. But one thing he did specify, which is quite chilling, is that there are going to be, over the course of the Parliament, cuts of up to 25% in many government spending departments. And though it's very hard to have cuts like that just from efficiency, well, it's impossible to do it just from efficiencies, and so there's still more pain to hear.